Hello everybody, today I would like to give you a more detailed overview of the game Cruel Necessity by Victory Point Games. It's the English Civil Wars 1640 to 1653 by John Welch. It's a state of siege game with all that entails, so it's a card-driven game. And first I would like to introduce you to the cards. The game is played in 3 phases. Signified by different colors, so if you have played any of the other State of Siege games like Ottoman Sunset or Habsburg Eclipse, you are familiar with this. You can play them in any order. You can also choose just to play the Second Civil War or the Third Civil War, or you can play them as one big campaign game. You have the option of playing the cards in their numerical orders, which means that you're actually getting all of the relevant information, the historical information as it would have occurred in real life, or you can just mix them up. I played I was trying to play the campaign, but I failed. I didn't really get past the First Civil War, but I was playing it in the order that it was historically unfolded in, and that was quite an interesting thing, and actually it meant that I lost. It was also my first full game, so I was also pretty inexperienced. In addition to the event cards, which you can see here, you also have so-called achievement cards, which first of all give you victory points, those blue triangles, but they also give you something that you can do with them. So for example, this one, eliminate Star Chamber and regulate Privy Council, would let you reveal the next 3 event cards in the draw pile and return them face up in any order you desire, which means you can basically predict the future. But in order to get these achievement cards, you have to fulfill certain requirements. Now, this one, first of all, costs 3 zeal points. You get zeal points at the beginning of each phase, depending on how you're doing. And also certain other criteria have been met. So the monarchy track needs to be B or higher, Parliament needs to be B or higher, and in this case also you must have acquired the Petition of Right achievement card first. Also, in addition to the event cards, which basically drive the game, there is an off-map battle scenario, which also uses battle relevant cards like this one. This is a card that gets sometimes revealed during the battles, and this one here is called Swedish Style Formation, and it's good for the parliamentary player, so you, because it's a blue card, during the step 4 of the battle sequence, play this card to add +2 to any parliamentary musket and pike unit's combat value. I'm going to tell you exactly what this means later on. But first, let's look at the event cards. Those of you who have played State of Siege before know that events are really important, and there are different things that happen. Usually, each State of Siege card comes with movement of an invading army, and this is no different. Here, in this case, it's Ireland that moves. There is also unrest in London, which is another action that will happen. You also get other events here. So, for example, in the religious area, you get +1 zeal point. In the political area, in this case, you have different things that can happen. If the Royalist Army of the North or West is in Region 2 or closer to London, King Charles escapes, replace the Army of Scotland unit with the Charles Army of Scotland unit, same side up, otherwise blah blah blah. In this case it's slightly different. Here you have Puritanism gets a +1, which is very important because you can influence those political and religious tracks by rolling dice, and this actually helps you helps your die roll. And here we have unrest in London, and you also place a deviltry marker. Here again you have the typical movement of armies. In this case it's Ireland and the North, but you also have these red symbols, and this means that there will be a stylized off-map battle. And I'm going to show you how this works in a minute. With this battle mat, you can see two sides. The red side is the royalists, the blue side is essentially you. You have different chits that you can pull to put into these places. So here you have cavalry, and then you have musket and pike units here. And basically you reveal them one by one, and then there is a face-off. Also up here, there may be a battle event drawn, like this one that I showed you here earlier. And then basically you roll dice, and this is how this works. You have the two sides facing off, and this really is a face-off. You turn them over one by one. And you can see some of these are named, but that's not really important just now. But this one is an event one. So basically it means we need to draw an event card now. And this is the Swedish style formation event, which we had earlier. And basically what this says is that during the actual battle, you add a +2 to any parliamentary, musket and pike unit's combat value. So I'm going to add a +2. I don't have a +2 marker with me at the moment. That's in the other bag. But what I basically do is I decide which one I want to support. Now, how does this actually work? What happens is you have to roll 2 dice per each pair of units. And this means that then, when you roll the dice, you get a result that you add each one to the respective unit that you have been rolling for. So that hence the 2 dice that have different colors. So let's roll for the first one. We get a 6 and we get a 3. So now what you would do is you would add these two together. So 6 plus 3 is 9 and 3 plus 4 is 7. So there's a differential of 2 between the two. So this means that it's a victory for the parliamentarians. Having said this, since this is a 6, it would be a victory anyway, because whenever you roll a 6, it's a victory. So this one goes into the victory box. This one goes into the defeat box. So you go through this top to bottom, and now you can see why it's important to add the +2, because you would choose, you can do it this one of 2 ways. Either you decide you go with the one that is lowest. That would make sense to bring it up to the same strength of 4 over here and then hope for the best. Or you say, well, I'd rather go for one where I'm absolutely sure that I can actually win. So I'm going to assign the +2 to this one here. So I'm going to roll for this one first so that we actually see what happens. So this one is 6 plus 4 is 10. 3 plus 2 is 5. So that's a victory as well. And so you go down the line. 7 over 10, that's a victory like this. For the parliamentarian, a loss for the parliamentarians. This is a loss for the parliamentarians as well. As you can see, I roll really badly. 8, that's 8 over 7, that's a draw. And that's 6 over 4, that's a defeat. So then you count where most of your troops are. At the moment, most of my troops are in the defeat area, which means I would lose. So I'm now going to put all of these victory guys into the draw box so that at least I get away with a draw, which means that I lose 1 zeal point. If it was a defeat, not only would I lose 1 zeal point, but the monarchy track would go down 1, and also the army that I have been fighting would get a +1 strength point. I'm going to explain to you what that means in a second. So in this case, I've decided to go for a draw. Now what you have to do is you have to check if any of these troops make it to the next round. So basically anybody in the defeat box needs to do a deadly outcome roll. So you roll. 3 means this one goes into the recovery box and can be used later. This one is a 6. It gets returned to the draw box immediately, so you can use it on your next battle. This one is dead, leaves the game. This one is a 5, goes back immediately into the draw pile. And this one is a 6, also goes immediately into the draw pile. Usually they tell you to put it into those boxes. I find that this is actually not such a good idea because I tend not to mix them up properly. So going forward, I'll be using cups. So this is how this all works. If you get a victory, and I've never ever managed to get a victory, not only do you get do you win, but you also get for each of your units that is in here that is over 3. So you have, if you have more than 3 units in here, for the 4th you get 1 benefit point, for the 5th another, and so on and so forth. And then you can use those benefit points as you see fit. Like I said, I've never managed to do this, so I don't know what that feels like. I have to say I suck at these battles. It was horrible. I lost every single one of them. So now I'm going to show you the map, the main map, and what I've just explained to you happened in the battle affects the main map. So just a word of warning, I have copied the map and put it onto foam core because I didn't like the map that came with it. It's too flimsy, but now you have this ugly break in between. Don't worry, this isn't how the game comes. Don't worry about it. So first of all, I'm going to give you a pan of the map. We start right here where you would place your available achievement cards as you draw them. Moving south, here we have Edinburgh, the Highlands, Scotland, moving into northern England. Here we have Hull, coming down, Bristol, Oxford, Bristol, London, here the Army of the West in Cornwall, and over here we have Ireland. At the moment the Irish Army is in an area called Beyond the Pale, which my Irish friends find absolutely hilarious that this is called it. And like any stage of siege game, you have a central space, which in this case is, surprise, surprise, London. And you have different groups that will move towards it. So here we have the Army of the West, which will move from Cornwall through Devon, Somerset, Sussex, into Oxford, and then finally into London. So Cornwall, Devon, Sussex, Oxford, London. You have the same happening up here. From the Highlands, they will move down to Edinburgh, borders, lowlands, and then they will stop in Northumberland. And if they are in Northumberland, what they will do is they will lend a +1 strength point to the Army of the North. Just like the Irish, when they move beyond the Pale, Munster, Leinster, Ulster, Irish Troubles, something happens over here. They don't just jump onto the main map and then move towards London, but they actually, first of all, they completely fortify Dublin, and then they look at the Irish Troubles, and they are over here. And what happens is this Irish Troubles marker sits underneath the Catholicism marker, or political track. And what then happens is sorry, this is actually wrong. This is the Puritanists. Yeah. What then happens is this marker gets reduced by 1 point. You don't want it. If you get an F, if you get 4 Fs, you lose the game. So this is now in the F space, not good. And then the Irish Troubles marker moves 1 further. And so the next time Ireland activates, this track, which is the Scotland track, will be lowered by 1. And then so on and so forth. So this is really dangerous. The Irish Troubles will affect Scotland, Parliament and Puritanism. And continuously so. And now I would like to draw your attention to the 2 English armies. The Army of the North and the army down here of the West. When you conduct one of those off map battles that I just showed you, you have to declare against which of these two armies you're going to fight. So if you win, this has consequences for this army that you just declared war on. And first of all, it becomes disrupted. Or if you lose, it gets a +1 strength marker. So instead of 4, this army would have a +1, so a 5. So if you were to try and push this army back, if it were to activate on that turn, you would have to roll a 6 instead of a 5 or 6. So quite problematic. Now, when we look at this card here, I'm just going to pick a random card. What happens is, first of all, we have movement. We don't have an off-map battle because there is no red symbols. So basically what it says here is the Army of the West. You need to roll a die, which isn't usually the case. I roll a 4. On a result of 4, 5 or 6, this army activates twice. Brilliant. So it means it starts to move. It moves from Cornwall into Devon, and then it moves into Somerset, where it stops. Here in the religious area, I get 1 zeal point, so I get 1 more action, but it also tells me that the Parliament track goes down 1, which is not so good because it's already at the D level. So now it's going to move to the F level. For F, you lose. So now it's my turn to actually do something about this. And I have zeal points. Here, down here is the zeal track. I start with 5 and I get an additional 1 just now from the card. And now I can take different actions. Actions include your normal staple state of siege thing, where you just basically roll a die against an army and push it back. You can push them back as far as level 5, but no further. So let's try this. I would have to roll a 5 or 6. And I roll a 2, of course. So I lose 1 zeal point, 1 action down. I try again, because those Westerners are pesky in Somerset. And I roll a 1, another loss. I try one more time. I roll a 1, brilliant. And this is how I've been rolling all the time. I have not been able to roll really well. Another thing I could do is, I could say, let's fortify one of my cities. So when an army comes into the same space as a fortified city that belongs to me, they cannot move until they have basically besieged and won over this particular city. So besieging works by rolling 2 dice, and they have to do this. They can't say I'm going to move around it. They have to first get it and remove it from my grasp. So they roll a 4 and a 5 in this case. The value is 2, so they rolled twice over, so they turn it by 1, and then another 1, and that's it. They have won this particular fortification. Bristol is now theirs, and now they can move. So it's in my interest to have this value as high as possible. Now what I can do in my action is, I can, for example, say, yeah, I'm going to spend 1 zeal point and fortify London. I'm going to spend another zeal point to fortify Edinburgh. I cannot now work on Bristol because it is contested. There is the Army of the West in that area. You can also attack a fortress by rolling 1 die. You don't get 2 dice like they do. I roll a 4. And I'm attacking Dublin, which has a 2, so I turn this up 1. So now I have actually spent all of my zeal points, but I've brought Dublin a little closer into my grasp. I can also, in addition to what I've just done, look at the Parliament and the monarchy tracks and the religious tracks and try and move them up, because when they are in their A spaces, when I get a grade A, I actually get stuff for it. First of all, I get victory points, those blue triangles, but I also get other things. So for example, if the Scottish marker is in the top range, the Scottish army gets a -1 strength, which is good. When I want to fight it, it's not worth 3 anymore, but only 2. Likewise, when they go down to F, I also have issues. So for example, when Parliament is in its F zone, I cannot fortify London. I can't work on this. or when the Scottish track is in its F zone, the army in Scotland gets a +1. If Puritanism is in F, I lose 1 zeal point per turn. Equally, if it's in its A zone, if Catholicism is in its A zone, I get a +1. So these are all things that you can try and work on. I have to say I have a bit of an issue with it, because sometimes it feels like, oh, I've got an action left over, what do I do with this? Oh, just try and improve one of your tracks. And then you roll, and in my case, I usually roll so badly that it didn't make any difference. The tracks stayed where they were. And it felt sometimes a little bit like, oh, I've got a zeal point left over, which happens at the beginning of the game, and you basically waste them. You do sometimes get card effects that will give you a +1 to one of these markers, and then it means that it is a 1 die roll modifier. But in general, that didn't help me. Now, I have been very unlucky playing this game. I'll say that straight away. So that kind of made it feel like, meh, you know, you're trying, but it's not really working. What is the point in all this? Having said this, on my first play, I also didn't really have any strategy. This game is something where you really have to think about what you want to do. It's very different from other State of Siege games in that it's much, much more complex. And you only, I think, learn to appreciate the intricacies and how those game mechanics belong together on subsequent plays, you know. Also, I played the normal scenario, which is the historical scenario. And it meant that in the beginning it was Scotland, 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 and I rolled really badly, and it was a huge disaster. So now that I've finished this game for the first time, I'm thinking about how I played and what I did, and I've already got some ideas of how I would like to change it and what I would like to do differently on the next play. And I will do a proper review with me sitting down and looking into the camera, but this is just a brief overview that I wanted to give you because this game has really been intriguing me. And I do have a couple of turns that I played earlier before my camera died earlier today. I will post those. It's really just me playing the first Civil War and talking to myself and trying to figure out the rules. So for those of you who are interested in that kind of thing, you can watch that one as well. Okay, bye.